Freelancers, small business owners, consultants, and solopreneurs. Some people are just drawn to working for themselves. I'm Owen Roth. In this show, I have conversations with self-employed folks about their career journeys. Welcome to the Bossless Path podcast. And here we go. Today I'm joined by Jason DuBose, engineer extraordinaire. Jason, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, engineer extraordinaire, can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Sure. I own two companies here in Corvallis. One company is actually an engineering company. It's called Rogue Sky. That company is primarily focused around engineering of buildings, processes. And then I have another company, which is a manufacturing company called Puren Solutions. And that company, we manufacture ultraviolet lights, which are used to sterilize surfaces, and we found markets to actually help sanitize greenhouses for plants.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So so I'm sort of the engineer behind all of that. So I underpin all of it, but they're also my companies. So I'm also I'm the president, the engineer, the janitor, and everything else underneath that. But also supported by a terrific team as well.
So your location, because I visited once when we met, it's if anyone who's listening is familiar or lives in Corvallis, it's on Highway 34 or 2034.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. As you're heading out of town from Corvallis, just like by Two Town Cider.
Right.
On the highway.
Yep.
How big is that space? Could you describe it?
It's about 5,000 square feet. It's broken up between sort of a back warehouse area and a front, call it office space.
Yeah.
And the way we have it sort of structured is a lot of the prototyping, manufacturing sort of on the backside of the business, and then sort of the front side we had reserved. We do have some offices that were taken just for our administrative purposes.
Sure.
But it was the other part that, I know you've been there, you've seen it and toured it.
Got a little tour, yep.
Is that we had reserved some space for new businesses to sort of start up, in that facility. And that's, even when you see on the outside of the business, it's called Rogue Makers.
Right.
It has just sort of a twist on my engineering company, Rogue Sky. And part of, I sort of mentioned I have a manufacturing company, and that has been sort of a long time, coming of age, that I've invested heavily in myself and the equipment in order to make that manufacturing company possible.
Yeah.
But I went through the troubles of, making that capital investment. And what I wanted to do is give an opportunity for businesses to essentially come out of the garage. Sure. I had to come out of my garage and go into a space. I went from that space into a bigger space, and then from that space into where I'm at right now. Mm-hmm. And I want to give that opportunity for somebody to sort of skip some of those steps to come out of the garage and move into a space like what we have and leverage the tooling that we have to get their manufacturing operation to start selling product. And that was sort of the creation of Rogue Makers, which I guess you could call that a separate business, but it's not intended to make money. It's just there to give an opportunity for local businesses to come in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know when I visited, there was a number of people in there. Is it kind of rotating as far as the people who are in the Rogue Makers part of it, like the other startups?
Yeah. We actually had a few people, initially, and those people have decided that they've moved on, their businesses, and, businesses, they come, they go,
Sure.
They make it or they don't. And we're sort of in process of sort of opening up applications to see who wants to come in. And also internally to ourselves, we're restructuring, and how we're going to do our business, just physically within the facility, organize ourselves to be more efficient, and also open up new opportunities for new businesses. So, but the businesses we had in their past, we had a rock climbing company that was making a device to help assist people in rock climbing. We had a company called Hemp Energy that was in there. They made a hemp-based electrode for renewable batteries. Wild Horizon, Jen King, she makes dog tags, but CNC engraved dog tags.
Gotcha.
Besides, my companies, Corvallis 3D, which is a 3D printing company that was here in town. They moved into our facility to run their operations as a big print farm. Mm-hmm. So we've had a number of businesses sort of float through there and given them the opportunity to establish and grow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Your companies, why do you have two? Why are you taking on so much?
Oh,
almost three.
The 3, 4, who counts nowadays? So I guess the answer is a lot deeper than just sort of an easy answer.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay, let's start at the beginning.
Sure.
So I'm gonna go all the way back to when I was in college.
Yeah, let's go.
So when I was in college, I went to Sacramento State University. So it was a state college. They had a fantastic mechanical engineering program, very hands-on. Mm-hmm. I love the professors, but it was a very, very hands-on, institution. You got to work one-on-one. You were machining pieces and equipment. You got to learn about engines and engine design, and I absolutely loved it. And then I went to go work for a company that designed trucks, like all-wheel. It's called Alltech Industries. And they design these all-terrain trucks to go across deserts and, basically spraying. It's like a big giant squirt gun to spray down electrical towers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Spray down because fire?
No. So believe it or not, so the lines, they can carry a couple 100,000 volts, right?
Yeah.
But you have a metal tower. Right. So electricity and metal don't really go well together.
Or go very well together.
Well, they do. Yeah. A little too well.
Yeah.
Right. But there's little things called insulators, these little like little bells that connect between the tower and the wire. And so those are non-conductive and they're designed to actually keep electricity away from the metal.
Right.
Right. Well, birds poop on them, you get dust, and there's things that are conductive. And if you don't keep them clean, electricity can arc from the wire to the tower, and you could have an outage.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of a specialty with that company, and I got involved even as an intern. I was one of the few engineers in the company, believe it or not.
Really?
And they, I was sort of... I caught the eye of an excellent salesman. His name was Steve Pena. He recognized that I could do things that other groups couldn't, in terms of just engineering. Like he had a lot of good ideas, and, he'd approach me and I've always taken just from, I think forever taken the approach that, nothing is impossible. Mm-hmm. And so, he was starting to challenge me. Okay, well, I want to ship this trailer, but I have to put it in a cargo container to go overseas because I got to say, I could save thousands of dollars in shipping costs. Okay, let's redesign this thing. You have to, go inside of a cargo container.
Yeah.
So that started me off in manufacturing. And then from there, I actually had an internship at Lockheed Martin, Missile and Space, down in California, and that was a good experience. In government, and what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
It was an amazing opportunity. You see such, the amazing technology, but just I think it was my second week in, and I was told you got to stop working so fast. You're making us look bad. It's like, okay, this is, so I'm not good for this. And then, I ended up working for an engineering company. It was actually a building engineering company down in San Jose called Advanced Design Consultants. And from there, I really knew nothing about buildings. I came from manufacturing, but I went to go work there. And the boss that I had, was a good teacher. And I accelerated very quickly. Within that company. It was a small business, but I did grow very, very quickly within the company. And I think I was there for about 13 years. So I was pretty much a grunt when I started. And by the time I left, I was the VP of engineering.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is some growth.
And I was, for all intents and purposes, I was running the business. and we, year over year increasing of sales and whatnot. In California, the life is so busy. Both my wife and I were working, 2 jobs. We had 2 kids at the time, and it's a life that's, I hate to say it, in self-reflection, it's not a life not worth living. Down there, because all your money is going towards daycare and paying for a mortgage, and it's a very material life.
Right.
So, we had my wife Maria. She has a couple brothers that were actually up here in Oregon. One over in Albany, one over in Eugene, and we had come and visit him a few times, and we just sort of had a powwow that's saying, okay, if we want to look someplace, where would we want to go? And it just so happened that an opportunity had come up for this engineering company. Mm-hmm. Another engineering company that they're actually quite large, but they had multiple offices, and one of them happened to be in Corvallis. This little spit of an office.
Yeah.
It literally had 2 people in it, and I was going to be number 3,
Yeah.
And
it's a bit of a change.
Yeah. So I switched over to the local office down in San Jose, and I worked there for about a year. And then they had paid for me to move up here to Corvallis.
So when you got hired and you worked at the San Jose office, that was in anticipation of relocating. Okay.
Yeah. And then the anticipation was I was going to take this office and start running it and build the revenue streams and, start continually building the office.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. Right. Year over year, we kept increasing revenue. I was getting new clients, really digging into the universities, Mm-hmm. And, I was having a really good time with it. But then it came down to, when I had to have a review, it was like, okay, review time. I did all my check marks. Let's see, what my raise is going to be.
Yeah.
And the district manager had come down from Portland, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and he's like, oh, you guys are doing fantastic, like that. And it's like, okay, here we are, and, let's have the money. And he goes like, yeah, but he says, yeah, you moved up here, to, from California to Oregon. And he's like, you should have gotten a pay cut, and so, yeah, we're not going to give you a raise and anything like that. And it was sort of that crushing moment, that it was like, wait a minute, I did everything you asked of me.
Right.
It's just this disbelief, like, really? I'm like, I actually took a pay cut to actually come from, my prior company to come over to your company.
Yeah.
And I moved my life from the Bay Area to up here, and now you're telling me that, I'm not, I'm not worth it,
Yeah.
And so it's pretty much that night that it was, sort of a decision. It's like, okay, we're gonna do something, right?
Yeah.
And sort of the subsequent weeks, it was this sort of soul searching. Like, what am I gonna, what do I want to do? I sort of made that commitment at that time. Mm-hmm. Anytime somebody makes a commitment that they're, this is not for me, I need to do something about it. That you've already made that emotional switch, right?
Right.
And there's no really turning back. So, but trying to figure out what you want to do, sort of like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Sort of in that moment. I think I just turned 40, and,
mm-hmm.
Sort of, I don't know, my wife would probably swear it's a midlife crisis, but it was a real trigger. And, again, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I was want to have a business. Right. And I was going to strike out on my own.
Was that an idea that was developed rapidly right in that moment? Or was that something? Okay.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was like, I got to do something else. And, here's sort of the crazy part. I told you that one of my company's names is Rose Sky. Mm-hmm. Right. I ended up like picking and starting the company without an intention of what that company was.
Really?
I did not have a clue what I was going to do with it.
You just knew it would be within the engineering sphere, or did you even know that?
I said maybe. It was like big maybe, right?
Wow.
All I knew is I wanted to have a name that I could do something with. Again, sort of this soul searching, right? Trying to figure out. All I knew is I had now the idea, I wanted to have a company. I had a company name. Now, what was I going to do? Right. Looking back from that point, what made me happy, And I reached back all the way to when I was working in manufacturing, and sort of, having a salesman that sort of believed in me and like, can you do this, and that, and I had such a great time, and I was working with my hands. I was working with, the guys on the shop floor taking my designs and them teaching me like, well, this is why this doesn't work. Why, you drew something to 1/1000th of an inch. Is that, like put the tape measure on the table. They're like, show me on the tape measure where this is. Those are all learning experiences that I absolutely enjoyed.
Okay, yeah.
So this is where sort of these strategies sort of started to come into play, that it was impossible for me as the engineer in a building world to automatically flip a switch and say, I'm going to do manufacturing. It's absolutely impossible. You just can't do that. But you can transition there, right? So, and just things played out the way they were going to play out, that the company was going to shut down. So I decided that Row Sky was going to be an engineering company doing building design. And I had a very unique skill set.
The company you were working for, did they let you go, or you take that message that they were giving you as like your need to leave?
It was a bit of a mutual deal because,
okay.
The company was called Glumac. It is called Glumac still.
Yeah.
But they had been sold. And then during sort of the transition, they were looking around all these big offices, and there's a little tiny one called Corvallis. It was sort of maybe it was a gift at the time.
Yeah.
That they were going to shut things down. But at the same time, they needed me because there's really only 2 people in the company at the time that knew how to design high-tech facilities. Mm. It was myself and another gentleman in the office. His name is Sam Graves. And Sam was my mentor. I learned a lot of stuff from Sam, both personally and professionally. I mean, he's a great friend, and I just learned so much from him. But Sam stuck on, but they still needed sort of my talents. So it just so happened that when they decided they were going to shut down the office, I was able to start up Row Sky and then contract myself back to Glumac.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, so Glumac, I wasn't working for Glumac, but I was working for Glumac.
Yeah.
Right. But I was able to keep much more revenue, and then that was sort of helped get the ball rolling with Row Sky. And then just sort of started accumulating more and more work, with that as sort of the Glumac being called the investor, in the business. And then about the same time, part of my plan was I want to get back to manufacturing. So I had started up another company at the time called Element Grow. That was just a random name again, too.
Where are you grabbing these names, by the way?
Just coming up with them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Row Sky was had to do with, I wasn't sure if I was going to do something with like environmental engineering or, being that climate change is happening. You got a Row Sky, we're in Rogue Valley. I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah. It was an empty canvas.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was meant to be sort of an empty canvas that didn't know what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But I figured that if I kept my arms open enough, and sort of trying to catch whatever it is, it would sort of shape itself. Right? And it did.
Yeah.
So while I was incubating, Row Sky, I started up another company called Element Grow, which then pivoted into Puren Solutions, what it is today. 2016, 2017, is when all of this was started, sort of moving along. Element Grow is probably on its 3rd startup cycle. It's this continual like startup where we try something, well, that didn't work. But we always had sort of the fallback of Row Sky to continue to fund the opportunities that Element Grow or Puren Solutions could do.
Can you explain what you mean by you sort of touched on it there, like 3rd cycle of startup. I think of a startup as like a company and it tries to do something and it either succeeds or it fails. Yeah.
So, but think of it like this too, like, exactly the example you gave. A company, they grab a name, they start up, and either they succeed and they, move on to the next layer, or they close their doors and they fold. And a lot of it has to do with the money, right? There's no more money in it, right? Well, for me, I always had Rogue Sky there as the primary funding source to keep feeding money to, Puren Solutions or Element Grow at the time.
I see. Okay.
So I can keep this side of the business busy and take a side stream of the money and give it over to Puren Solutions or Element Grow, right? And, see if I can get this to kick. It didn't collapse, but I still had funding available to try to go at it again.
Yeah.
And again.
I see now. Okay. What's the reason for keeping them separate companies to begin with? Because they do different things?
They do different things.
Yeah.
One specifically is an engineering consulting company, and that's Rogue Sky. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is a manufacturing company. We're making products. We're selling products. We have a sales force out there, selling a good, to a customer. So that is sort of the purpose of, keeping them separate. Some could argue, like, why didn't you, from a company structure, why don't you keep them together?
It's a question that's come to my mind now.
Yeah, I know. And probably talk to my business partner, Brian Haskell, and he probably would side with you on that one.
I'm not picking a side. I'm just thinking of questions.
Tax time sort of sucks. So.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's the way it was sort of structured, and that's the way it's sort of been. So we
gotcha.
Like I said, we've reinvented Puren Solutions probably, a few times, and several, major lessons we've learned throughout that period of, that didn't work. Yeah. The customer wants this. No, they don't. It's reinvention. We had to reinvent ourselves, several things. And then, during that cycle, we're like, okay, those are hard lessons to learn, but we did learn them, and let's, try this again. And I think we're actually in a cycle right now where, okay, I think we actually have something,
Yeah.
And it's sort of accidental how we sort of started over here in one side of the business, trying to pitch this one product for a very specific market. But turns out, holy smokes, there's something way over here that we have never thought about. And turns out they really want it over here.
Yeah.
So stop focusing on this market, which we didn't really have any much traction in to start with, and really focusing on this market now, where we're just starting to get our feet wet and seeing where it goes.
That's super interesting to hear, because actually this reminded me of a conversation I had with someone yesterday, which was when I said I do photography and video, and he asked me what type, and I'm just like, well, to be honest, it's a little bit meandering. I've done a lot of different types of both photography and video, but it's meandering. And I said it, he could detect it with hesitation. It was, the wrong thing. I was being truthful, but I was embarrassed about it. And he's like, that's a good thing. Meandering is good, because he said, if you do that, which is kind of what it sounds like you're describing exactly, is just you will find things and you're flexible and you're open to opportunities. Ones that you might not even have known existed within your industry, or maybe even industry adjacent. And that's what can really glean success. And he said he's seen many startups fail because someone was so bullheaded about I'm going to make these widgets and this is what people want. Yeah. And I'm going to sell them. And then they put 2 years and tons of money into it, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And no one's buying it because there's not a market. Yeah. But they've committed, and they're not flexible. Yeah. It was kind of a cool moment for me. I'm just like, oh, meandering is good. Yeah. And now I'm hearing it from you too, and I'm just like, oh, that's funny. 2 days in a row, I've heard from two different people.
There's a book. It's called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And I'm not a reader, and my wife will tell you that. It drives her nuts. But
so you giving a book endorsement means it's...
But I got the audiobook. So
okay. Either way, you still have to sit down and ingest it.
Well, living in the Bay Area, in California, is I live 30 miles, but I got an hour and a half commute.
Oh, right. Yep.
So, and that's each way. So we got lots of time to sit and listen to something. So, but it's, he talks about what makes a good company, great. Right. Mm-hmm. And he talks about these, and it's all about statistics and, mapping out. I mean, it's an excellent, book, even audiobook. But he talks about, one of the topics is bullets before cannonballs, right? Yeah. So you what makes a great company is sometimes they'll try something, but they'll just, test the market with it,
Yeah.
test. Well, this one seems like it. We're getting good pings, keep testing.
Yeah.
And then when they feel like they've got enough feedback, then that's when they'll launch the cannonball, right?
Right.
And that's, I can even look back on, I told you we failed, 2 other times, and we're on our third, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not third time failing, but hopefully. But the 2 other times I could look back and I was so convinced like this is going to be it. This is what the customers need.
Yeah.
We're in for this. And I was so far wrong. We didn't test the market. Even when we were testing it, we didn't test it, broadly enough to say, yeah, we have a real product here. Mm-hmm. I knew that there was an opening in the market and my product could fill this market, right? But I didn't go the extra step to say, would somebody actually buy this product?
Yeah.
And I didn't do enough bullets, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was a hard lesson. Right now I have an amazing team that's around me, and this is where I think that we have the greatest, chances of success with my company. Mm-hmm. I have really experienced, guys available that, I'll tap my business partner, Brian Haskell, probably one of the most experienced guys in the startup world, great salesperson, understands the sales process, understands the the startup mentality and, scrappy. For me, I'm an engineer. I love the shiny thing that's, the next shiny ball. Like, what can I solve that? That's, I will chase that ball, but he's very good about like, no, like focus on this. Let's make this good. Right.
Yeah.
Or, a better way to say it is make it good enough.
Sure. Yeah.
And he has a saying, and it's going to be really, it's really started to sort of focus how I approach designing products is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Mm. I like that.
So, yeah, and he said it and he's drilled it into me and sort of is really focused, how I approach a design, actually on both sides, in both companies, what can I get done as quickly as possible? That's good. Right. And then if it looks like it's, going to be a more successful, approach, then I could take the time, and work on making it perfect. But just trying to get to the customers are not vested in a perfect product. They want something that's good.
Yeah.
Right? Those are all elements that have sort of laid a foundation for me to be really, I think I would call it successful, that we have the right elements and the noises are there, the feelings are there to, have a successful company where we're at right now with Puren Solutions.
My dad's a mechanical engineer.
Oh, yeah?
And I've got that perfectionism in me, and I have to battle with what you're talking about all the time. I did it earlier today when I was editing something. I was like, I put so much time to this. It's good enough. No one's going to see those 2 frames like in the video that aren't going to work or not going to work, quote unquote.
I mean, if it doesn't take me a long time to make it that little bit better, I'll take that time. Right. But if I'm spending an exorbitant amount of time just for something that no one's going to see, then it's not worth it,
Yeah.
And it, unless it's really going to bother me.
Well, there's that balance though of like your personal satisfaction, but then also if you got to balance it against a lot of other things, right? You got a business is. So profitability and also just use of your time because you wear a lot of hats.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Actually, let's go into that. I'm curious, how do you balance all your time between those companies? Like, you already do a lot of things within the companies, but then you have to spread your time amongst them as well, the companies themselves. How do you do that?
I don't know.
Is it within a day? Are you bouncing between projects within each of the companies, or is it like, oh, it's a Monday, or this week I have to really focus on stuff at Rogue Sky?
Boy, it's hard to answer that question. There is no set schedule for me.
Yeah.
I think life would be so much easier if I only had one company to focus in on. Mm-hmm. But even how I've, structured the companies. And I've only told you about, Rose Sky, and Puren Solutions. I told you about Rope Makers, which isn't really, it's just, I'm opening up opportunities for people. Mm-hmm. But, I have 3D printers. And so we open that up to the community, as a print farm. Mm-hmm. So, and, we have, 2 more things embedded, so, I'm always, and the reason why I do a lot of that is actually to sort of layer the revenue streams. So if one stream was to dry up, there are multiples that we can sort of fall into. And, the pandemic sort of, put things into focus, and, you see recessions coming, and we've been through recessions. And if you sort of put your eggs in sort of that proverbial one basket, things can happen. Right. So you sort of learn to diversify and try to create, multiple revenue streams. That's what I've had to learn how to do. Now, how to actually do it, physically do it, I was joking with my business partner the other day. Both of us, we were pretty sure we both have ADHD. So we jump around a lot, you know, and it's like some ways it does help us because we're jumping onto the immediate problem that's in front of us.
Yeah.
Right. And while we start a lot of things, we never can finish them right then and there. Mm. But behind the scenes, we're absorbing all of it and processing it. And then we could come back around to it. Right? Sure. So we can, and when we do need to focus, we can, both him and I can really just hyper focus, into the problem, and get it nailed down and work underneath deadlines. So that being said, I think stress is a helper, in some regards, to get things done.
Yeah, the healthy type of stress that
it's a healthy kind of stress
forces you to do things.
But if you look at my email system, I've got probably 6 email accounts that I hop through, sort of constantly. I cycle through them and then go back through them and making sure that I'm not missing anything that's sort of hot. I live and die by my calendar. So making sure I don't miss, your thing.
Sure.
You got it in 6 different calendars, but you work at it and then you learn to delegate. I think I would say I'm a pretty good delegator, so accounting is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
But we have a great, accounting company in town. They cost me far less than it would cost for me to actually hire somebody and bring him into the office. Okay, that's how we can manage the bookkeeping.
Sure.
They also manage payroll. Okay, so that's one less thing I have to worry about.
Yeah.
Right? My business partner Brian, he's not an engineer, but he's fantastic on operations. Right? Mm-hmm. Great. So everything insurance related, contracts, everything, I could put that over onto him. Mm-hmm. All he wants me to do is focus on just making money for the company. Right? So that just sort of helps me silo myself in just sort of this engineering role, attract clients, get the clients on board, process the work, and then pass the invoicing off to, accounting, outsourcing. If we have, on the pure end side of things, if I need to design something, I'll take the time. I'll take 2 days, sort of just try to rapidly engineer something as quickly as possible, right? Mm-hmm. Try to get it good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Do a couple iterations on the 3D printer, and in the meantime, pack something else in there, and just, so it's always moving. And I think that's one of the reasons why I probably couldn't hold down a real job right now is because,
real job.
Yeah, a real job,
yeah.
That everything is so fluid for me on a daily basis, that I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
I can't, just stick with one thing and do that one thing over and over and over again.
Sure.
I don't think I would do well with that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you enjoy the adventure of self-employment.
Yeah. Adventure. I think that's a great way of saying it.
I mean, I say it because I've had a lot of self-reflection, speaking of what you were saying earlier and your realization that it was something for you. I've always known that for myself. I've always enjoyed diversity and my interests, whether it's professional or personal. Usually there's a little bit of crossover there. that's something that I have found. I'm just like, well, yeah, if I'm not actually self-employed, I want there to be some element of that in my life, even if it's a side hustle or what have you.
Yeah.
And I want my life to be, it needs to fulfill me, right? The things in my life need to fulfill me. So,
Yeah.
You're not the first person I've talked to who's self-employed who has described what you're describing.
Yeah.
Very similar words. I feel like it's one of the common through threads for people who are self-employed.
Yeah.
I do always laugh about the part, though, when you said, like, you couldn't have a real job. It's like, I don't know. I think you probably could. You might. They would hire you. You might not enjoy it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I guess is probably what you're getting at.
Yeah. Oh, I'm totally employable. But but whether I would enjoy it, that's another story.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, hopefully you don't have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've set yourself up nicely, and it sounds like you've grown a lot.
Yeah, I think I've grown, a lot, personally, professionally. I think, as with any, business, any startup, people, I don't know. I was sort of laughing the other day, trying to hire somebody, right?
Yeah.
People are like, well, I want this, I want this salary. And it's like, we're a startup, right? We can't pay you that. I would love to pay you that. I'd love to pay myself that, but I can't. Seriously, I can't. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
It just that there's the people that sort of coming in from the outside have no perspective on how hard it is on the inside of starting up a business, and the struggles that, we go through, both, personally, financially, emotionally, physically. I mean, there's so much that goes into starting up a business. And I went to a pub talk here in town where two brothers, very successful, I won't say the company, but they had started up multiple businesses, and it's very successful, right? And, they worked very hard and they great businesses. Mm-hmm. They really are. But the way their perspective was, it was like, well, yeah, I started the business, but, don't put any personal stuff online and stuff. And it's like, and then you start realizing their background of the story is that they, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but they came from money, right? So mm-hmm. they've never had that personal sacrifice, of like, listen, like I started my company with $1,000. My first $1,000 was part of a tax return that I used to, buy my first computer so I can buy use the engineering. My first customer paid for the software I needed to put on the computer, and then just sort of like, okay, well that bought the next thing, and just reinvesting, not taking any money, and just sort of growing. And then, okay, you're hired your first employee. Oh my God, that's absolutely terrifying,
Can imagine.
Because you got to create a stable source of income. Like, I'm okay taking a little fluctuation, but I can't not do that to this person.
Right.
You're basically sacrificing yourself to keep this person employed. Well, now you have two of them, now you have two employees.
Yeah.
And, and times are tough. You're the first one, to sacrifice. Just sort of those struggles, that somebody coming in, they don't see that. They don't feel that.
Right.
In the company. It's a different perspective, that no one can really share with unless you've been there. Right. And
yeah,
I know you're there, in
a different capacity.
And everyone, I think it's some cycle in owning a business. You'll have, maybe not all of it, but you'll have a little bit of it.
Sure.
Right. All throughout it.
Yeah. I certainly feel like I got a little bit of empathy there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I didn't have it as much before, but I remember when I'd worked for small business owners before as an employee. And I remember some of them were, let's say, ran their businesses better than others. But I remember one off the top of my head, I'm not going to say him, but very stressed and kind of neglectful of making decisions and answering employees' concerns or businesses' needs and stuff. And I remember thinking oh man, I might be in the same I feel like I would have done a little bit more of like being reactive to the needs around me. But at the same time, I was thinking about what was going on in their lives, not only the personal lives, but just the business. I'm like, that's a lot. Like if you think about it and you try and think logically, why are they having trouble? Like, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'd much rather be the employee getting like, a tiny little, wage versus like whatever they're having to go through, making these huge decisions with like, not only me, but like dozens of other employees. And it was one of the many reasons why I'd never really wanted to fully take that risk, fully go into being self-employed with no day job, because I knew that's what I was going to be swimming in.
Yeah.
So even if it was as a solopreneur, like I am myself right now. So you talked about that first employee and like kind of being scared. How has it been since then as you've grown? Is it more routine now as you add to the team?
When I hired Whitney, it was sort of Whitney was sort of a no-brainer. And she was so flexible too. It's just like, well, if things are tough, then it's okay. So with her, it was easy. But when I think it was Megan, an amazing engineer, and I know I needed the help. And I brought her on, but this was like the first serious employee, that's going to require a salary. And that was probably my first time I was really nervous about bringing somebody on.
Yeah.
And whether I can do this. Do I have the revenue to do this? It's not like a big company where, this month we didn't really make our minimum. So, but that's okay because we got a lot of revenue, cash and reserves and stuff. And we literally are going paycheck by paycheck, or month to month to see if we can actually make it. And I would say it's still like that, But I think, in a lot of ways, you need it. You have to have faith in what is happening right now in front of you, and have faith in what's going to happen to the future, right?
Yeah.
And I do believe in that faith that you just got to have it and you got to do it. And if you live in the fear of the what if, then you're never going to do it.
Right.
It's always a risk, and I think they also recognize that you're a small business and they're employee number 2, maybe 3, and that they recognize that there's a risk there too.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't change the nerves, but it does change as time goes on that, I made the right decision. Mm-hmm. This was the absolute 100%, 110%. This is the right person for me. Right. Mm-hmm. And we're making it because of this person, Yeah. The fear never really goes away because you feel that responsibility, of having employees, and you own that. You're the owner of the company. You own all aspects of that company,
including responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you're taking care of their family, that employee's family, and that weighs on me. Several months ago, we had a severe downturn. We had a couple clients that didn't pay us. And we had to let some people go. And it was the hardest thing I have ever done, Yeah. And, and I explained to the employees, like, this is why I have to, lay you off. And they get it, right? And they absolutely get it. And, it's not without tears from my side, because these are people that, I care for, I love with, and I know their families, and I know this is going to impact them, and I want to make sure this is going to be temporary, but I don't know.
Right.
That will haunt me, for as long as, I'm an owner of a company, and well into the future. And as a small business, if I was like 300 people and some other person down there is hiring somebody else, it's diluted. But when you have that sort of that ownership, you own it all.
Yeah.
Especially when you're that small. The hiring, and the nervousness that sometimes goes with it. Yeah, you get used to it.
Yeah.
But
just like anything in life, you get more acclimated, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like these podcasts, they're getting easier to do.
Yeah.
They're getting more dialed in, and
the
the more times you do it, the easier it is. Doesn't mean you don't stop, caring about it.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't mean you become robotic.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you the first time, like that you had to like let an employee go? Was it like not surprise you the act of having to do it, but how difficult it would be? I mean, I'm sure you didn't think it was going to be easy.
I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't realize how emotionally hard it was going to be.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I think it was emotionally harder on me than it was the other person. I think they felt bad for me, because I never intended for us to go down that path.
Right.
That's never the way I would have imagined that we're going down. You hire somebody with the intention that you're going to keep them. We're going to keep growing together.
Of course.
We're going to keep this machine running, and to the point that maybe, hey, we're so successful, we're going to sell this company. We're going to share in the profits and stuff, and we're going to be so successful. Then we'll go on to our next venture, together.
Yeah.
And to sort of have that rapid disconnect, right then and there. It's hard. It almost felt like a death, and I grieved. Yeah. I still sort of feel that sorrow, but you learn from it.
Yeah,
learn from it, and you do learn that. I think it increases that sensitivity around hiring somebody again.
Yeah, I'm sure
that you want to make sure that you're doing everything so that that you've learned from it, that you make sure you're protected, that you have enough surplus so that you can carry that person, and make sure that you don't repeat the same mistake,
Right.
But there's no guarantee with anything.
Of course not. Yeah. All you can do is look at your experiences, learn from them, adjust.
Right.
And new things will come up and
Yeah.
do it again.
Being a small company and you only have a handful of employees, and knowing that these are amazing people, and you're letting them go, and will they be there when you need them?
Yeah.
Right? Or have they moved on and now they're contributing to somebody else's success, and now you're starting over from scratch, and that's another hard thing.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
And that's all the, those are the things that you don't sign up for as an entrepreneur. It's like,
I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and entrepreneurship has so many different levels. It's not like, well, you fit in this little box, and everyone fits in the box and stuff. It's like, no, there's different sizes of box, shapes of boxes, the depth, and it just really depends, right? That's the short story of it.
Yeah, of course. With your different companies and the employees you have, are they like you? Are they floating in between projects within it? Or is there like employee A works for Rogue Sky and employee B works for one of your other companies? I
mean, right now we're dialed back in terms of employees. So, as for me, I float between everything. When we were sort of, really, really hopping, we had basically a dedicated, engineer on the Puren Solutions side of things, that could keep the sort of the product development things going. And it was an amazing relationship. I could come in to saying, Megan, I got an idea, and she was, my yin to my yang, like I had sort of this crazy idea, and she would be able to take that crazy idea and sort of narrow it down and actually try to, implement it.
Yeah.
And she has that amazing ability, to do it. And then I had, have an engineer on the Rogue Sky side of house, so I can assign projects to him, and I share in that workload, so. Mm-hmm. So my goal was to actually have separate groups, and they don't really overlap, even though we sort of still sit in the same, company meetings, all hands. Like, well, they're all, all in the same, either a digital room or physically in the same room.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It's got to be interesting if they, like you, had come from somewhere else where they worked in a larger firm.
Yeah.
And they come to that and they're just kind of have this like small team and they kind of are in this floating between companies under the same roof.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think everyone sort of appreciates the dynamic environment.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, some people might be attracted to it for that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think some people do wish for more organization, you know? I mean, who wouldn't? You know, I would wish for more organization too. You know, if you saw my desk, I wish I was more organized, you know?
Yeah.
But in terms of myself, I think I thrive a little more in the chaos, but, you know, I do have to respect the fact that people do require more, you know, organization. So we try to focus on both sides, you know, and, you know, people I have no time to be a micromanager, right?
Yeah.
It's never been my mentality to be a micromanager, nor do I have time to be a micromanager. And if I am a micromanager, I'm not going to be a successful entrepreneur, you know? So I delegate a lot, you know, but I am able to be there as a resource to my people at any time, right? I may be able to sit with them and just say, we talk through the ideas, you know, the idea generation, you know, and sometimes that's the most critical element, right? Get the idea right at the beginning, right? And then, you know, trust the people to work through and try to implement that idea, right? You know, and then, you know, be there throughout the entire process. And so that's sort of been, you know, my method. And for, you know, I could say maybe not for every entrepreneur, but for me, it works. Mm-hmm. You know, that way I'm able to sort of, you know, we have sort of the chaos that exists, but there's order in the chaos, you know, to keep things, you know, at the individual level for people to be able to execute.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
You know.
How did you get connected with Brian, your business partner? Because that sounds like he's been really helpful.
Yeah, I would say all my connections and even the people I've surrounded myself with, it's always been sort of serendipitous, you know. You know, I just I don't know, you call it what you want. So Brian. When I met him, he was working at SBDC, which is the Small Business Development Center out of Lynn Benton Community College, and he was working there. You know, he's an attorney, and but he enjoys small business, and he was teaching courses on small business and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And somehow, I don't remember how it sort of came to be, but SBDC wanted to come over and chat with me and stuff, and Brian had sort of, you know, tagged along, and I started, you know, showing, like, you know, give him a tour of the space, you know, like, well, this is what we do, and, you know, we got this space here for businesses to come into, and, you know, and Brian was, you know, he was really impressed, you know. And the fact, you know, at that time we were, you know, had this ultraviolet wand, you know, sterilize surfaces and whatnot. And he's like, wow. He's like, have you thought about this and that? I'm like, no, you know. And but, you know, what he wanted to do is he wanted to keep in touch with me. So he came back a couple times, and, you know, we started chatting. And then it just so happened that, you know, I think it really stuck with him, you know. That I was, you know, I think we needed each other, you know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That, you know, I needed his talents, you know, to sort of take me to the next level. And he saw that I had the capacity to do things that he couldn't do. Right.
Sure. And
so it really has been an amazing, you know, relationship, you know, friendship, you know, and, you know, so I just, you know, I can't speak enough about him.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, he's a fantastic mentor and a fantastic friend.
Yeah.
You know?
That's great. That's encompasses everything I've read and been told about a good business partner is like, you know, you can equate it if you want or not to like a marriage. It's like you need to balance each other. It shouldn't necessarily just be like, oh, I'm friends with this person and we're going to go into business together. You should really need to bring something that the other person doesn't have to the table.
Yeah. I truly believe that too. if I start up the engineering business with another engineer, I mean, that's sort of what you sometimes have to do in order to get the business going.
Sure.
But, there's always a difference of opinion, and here, I mean, there will be a difference of opinion about how to approach a client or, but there's never really a clash between, our own individual opinions because there's different perspectives, right?
Right.
And he always has a fantastic perspective and I have a perspective and we both will discuss it out and we'll always find some sort of like middle ground, or he'll basically say like, no, this really has to be done this way, but he'll explain it, in a fashion. I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've never, had we never had a couples fight, I guess if you would say that,
Partners fight. Yeah.
Partners fight, yeah.
Yeah.
So I sort of see it like that, and you're right. I mean, it's just like, like a marriage. He, like my wife is, I think, sort of the opposite of me, and she balances me out,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate that about her too.
Sure. Yeah. Every good partnership, romantic, business, friendship, I mean, should have that as the core of it, right?
Yeah.
The balancing out.
Yeah.
Was that something, because the way you just told it about how you met him, it sounded like you weren't actively looking for a partner, and it almost as if, like you said, serendipitous, but it was almost as if he kind of approached you to get involved. Is that how it happened?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. I wasn't actually actively looking for a partner.
Yeah.
Right. I was sort of doing my own thing. I had the most amazing marketing, person working for me. And just together we were sort of, pushing through it. And then I also had an amazing engineer working for me. And, just sort of the three of us were just, hunkered down and we were doing it. Right.
Yeah.
Now, were we doing it right? That's a different, that got to be discussed later. But, but when I met Brian, it was like, man, he brings something to the table, and he was sort of taking that mentor role, he was, when he sort of saw the products, he said, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It's like, no, I haven't thought about that, Well, have you thought about trying to maybe do this with it? Well, no, I haven't really thought about that part, and then he, he's a real he's an inventor in his own right. Like he has like a million different ideas, and, it was I'm laughing because this actually did happen. We were in a McDonald's and we both had, we were traveling and we both in the car and we could stop at McDonald's. So we had to use the restroom. Uh-huh. And he's like, oh man. And I'm using, the urinal and he's using the stall. And it's like, man, that reminds me of another invention I would like to make. Was it a non-stick toilet? It's like, but he would present but he would actually present on a regular basis, like an idea, but he will generate these ideas. And sometimes you're like, Brian, no. Yeah. But more often than not, he actually has a genuinely good idea that leverage. And what he likes about me is, and I think this is, one of my strengths, besides picking good partners, is that I can think through the problem, relatively quickly and saying, I think this can be done. This is how we could approach the problem, so I think from that aspect, he brings a lot of different elements and I could sort of, feather into that and we sort of meet in the middle. Yeah. So, but coming back to, how it sort of, came to be, mm-hmm. The way he was sort of interacting with me, sort of gave me a clue that he was really digging into what I was doing and started digging into the market and sort of seeing some of the potential of the product that I had at hand. And I started looking at him and just sort of saying wow, the way you're talking actually is sort of what I need right now and sort of that focus and, the things I'm sort of missing. Yeah. And, and I had to sort of, said at one point, Brian, if you're, if this isn't working out for you and you're interested, let's talk, and and he just like looked at me, he says, we'll see, And then, time passed. We kept talking.
Sorry, this is just making me think of like someone like asking someone out on a date.
I know,
like,
it was like we were seriously dating.
Yeah.
But it was like we're courting each other, but not like we haven't done a date yet.
Yeah.
And then he calls me up. He says, I want to take you out to lunch. Dating.
Yeah.
So we go out, and then, and then then it was sort of funny because the first thing, we sat down, and the first thing I said, like, are you ready to jump on yet? He's like, don't talk, And then he started up his side of things. It was more like he wanted to open it up and says, well, I would like to possibly join you, and like, here's what I would like to, my offer and stuff.
Yeah. I
was like, yeah, dude, like, what, like, yeah, I would have said yes to anything, really, like, 'cause I really see the potential here, and so, and I guess from that point on, it's been great having him.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so funny. That is definitely like the most entertaining, like partners discover each other, business partners discovering each other's story.
And we just feed off each other. I mean, it's just fun. I mean, like, I think one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur and starting up by yourself, is, and I've heard this from several entrepreneurs, is actually the loneliness.
Yeah.
And it's and you don't really realize it. And it's also one of the reasons why I wanted Rogue Makers to happen, to bring people in, because the community is there, and and to be surrounded by people, right?
Sure.
And what's great is when Brian walks in the morning, I'm already there, right? It's just like there's the community.
Yeah, right? The camaraderie, solidarity,
and I enjoy. We laugh all day and stuff, and just having a good time. And that really sort of completes, that energy, to move forward on a continual basis with the business.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny you mentioned that, because that was probably the most apparent thing that I wasn't fully prepared for.
Yeah.
When I tried to go full time.
Yeah.
Or did go full time, was just like, it's almost like someone dropped me off on an island. I'm just like, where is everyone? Like, because I've always like had jobs where I've worked with other people in various capacities, and I've loved that. I mean, you don't love every coworker, but that community and that camaraderie, and now I'm just like, I have to make all the decisions, and for the most part, I'm usually just at home on my computer. And I quickly realized I needed to like figure out solutions to solve that. I haven't got to the business partner side. I don't know if I ever will, but I've definitely lent more heavily on my social network to like, hang out with people more often, but you can only do that so much because you still need to get work done. But that was actually one of the, we were discussing before we started recording, why I was telling you about the podcast and the history of, or not the history, the reasons why.
Yeah.
And that was one of them as well, which I don't think I mentioned to you. It was just like, when you meet other people and you hear their story, even if it's just, an interaction we're having that I happen to be recording. But you just meet other people, and like, we're not working together, but it's just nice to have that, hear your story, and hear all my other guest stories, and make those connections with people who are not in the same boat, but they're in another boat that's very similar in the same ocean. So, but I'm still working on that, figuring out the loneliness part. That's a new adjustment.
Yeah. It took me a while to figure that part out too, and the pandemic really focused that. I mean, you're working, when the pandemic hit, I didn't have a business partner at the time, and, my marketing person, her name is Whitney, she was living in Idaho, so she wasn't local. So we were, so when the pandemic hit, it's sort of that we were both remote anyways, I at the time I was out of my garage into a bigger garage, not the place I'm into now, but, I would go every day to that shop, and I'm in there by myself because I can't do anything else.
Right.
Right. And just that loneliness, and just calling people, just, to talk,
Sure.
But for me, remote work was sort of a normal course of business, just even being like in Corvallis, I have work going on all over the United States, so my work is always remote. So I knew already how to do that, or knew how to do Zoom, and, so that was nothing new for me. But just the fact that I couldn't have that, person to person contact, it struck me pretty hard,
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm grateful for now. But to try to do it again, I don't know if I could,
Yeah.
just because that loneliness piece, like every Friday, like sometimes, we don't have employees in the office, and I feel it.
Yeah.
And it's actually distracting, the fact that there is this loneliness that exists.
Sure.
And so, all right, let's put some music on and, see if we can focus in on, the task at hand in front of me.
Well, at least it's only one day a week, it sounds like.
I hope so.
Yeah. So what do you see for in the future? Are you going to start a 4th, 5th, 6th company, or what do you, too hard to decide?
Yeah. As much as I'm trying to simplify things, it never seems to be going that way. I'm not sure what the future holds.
Yeah, that's okay.
I want, we're going to, like I said, I think we've got something real with Puren Solutions right now. I'm incredibly hopeful, and I have faith in where we can take it. With the intention that we can build it into, a reasonably sized company. I have no intention of operating a large company. That is not my desire. There was a seminar I attended early on, actually when I was with my other company here, Glumac, I thought like, and I don't know, this is my mind at the time, or like, man, this is great. There are going to be a whole bunch of startup companies. They're going to need engineering, because no, that was not it at all. But, I was able to, sit in on some of these seminars and stuff. And there was one done by this, her name is Caroline Cummings. And I think she's the director of RAIN, which is it's a nonprofit, but focused around startups and supporting startups in the communities. And she was a CEO of a couple different startups. And one thing I just remember out of this seminar she had mentioned is she says that there's a lot of different kinds of CEOs, right? There's like CEOs that start up businesses, and there's CEOs that will take a company from a list and grow it, and there's another company that will maybe take it from here to sell it.
Right.
There's like a lot of different kinds of CEOs and stuff, and so I've always sort of seen myself as I'm a really good startup guy. Like I can take an idea and expand it, but I'm not that guy to take it into sort of a growth sector, right? And that's sort of where, maybe I stop, and thinking about where we want to go as a company, especially around like Puren Solutions, that we have an idea, we have a product, we know we could expand on this product in several different, ideas and generations, to get more market penetration, but get to a point where we can be really attractive to be sold, And, internally we have a lot more ideas that are beyond, this company, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's work towards, selling this company in a couple of years, taking a chunk of that money and let's put into the new business, right?
Yeah.
Where we want to be, and keep having sort of that fun and start and sell and start and sell. And I think that's where I sort of see us, in the future.
Yeah. Cool. Well, time will tell, I guess. Yeah.
I hope so.
But
yeah.
You certainly don't strike me as someone who's going to sit still and just do the same thing. Because as you already said in your words, it's hard for you to do that, especially at this point.
My wife, she's absolutely amazing. So I give her a lot of credit for dealing with me. But she has dealt with me ever since we were first married, of me trying to start things, right?
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a project in the house, it drives her nuts. Sometimes I don't need to finish it, you know. But from like, you know, at one point I was like, well, I'm going to make biodiesel in my garage, you know, and starting something up and to, you know, trying to start up another, you know, business out of the garage, you know, to start another thing out of the garage, you know, and she's just like, yeah, okay, you know, and so she has a lot of grace and patience, you know, with me. And, you know, so it helps to have that kind of support network too. And I know, you know, you have that partnership, you know, because if you don't have that, then, you know, it makes entrepreneurship a whole lot harder.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, with that, what's some advice that you might have? I mean, that is a piece of advice, but is there any other advice that you might have for anyone who's considering self-employment?
You got to have a lot of faith, you know?
Yeah.
You got to have the belief in yourself that you can do it. I would say before you jump, you really need to have a good plan in place. You know, like I said originally, it's sort of the bullets before cannonballs. You know, make sure.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and that's sort of what I was even doing, you know, while I was working with my prior company before we parted ways, you know, and I started my own thing, and just making sure that whatever I was doing, I could still sustain. You know, I was married, I have 3 kids, a house, you know, I can't just stop taking money, you know, or not having money. Right.
Right.
So, you know, just, there's risk with any kind of business, right? And their risk doesn't go away, you know, just by starting a business and, you know, moving through the years, but it's how you mitigate that risk. Mm-hmm. So I think just take your time and do the homework, you know, before you sort of have that leap of faith, you know, and start your business.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Jason, how can people get in touch with you, see your various businesses, or check out what you do?
The easiest way is probably by, you know, email. So my company is Puren Solutions, and you can go to our website. It's just Puren Solutions. That's PUREN Solutions.com. My email is JDuBose. That's J and then DU, B as in boy, OSE, at PureEndSolutions.com. The other way is just call me directly, you know?
Okay. No one's given their phone number before. Yeah, that's
right. So my cell phone number.
I'm going to have you sign a separate release form that says I'm not held accountable for all the
I may have to have you take
spam
that
calls that, yeah.
This is on YouTube, so.
Yeah, we might not add that.
But. Yeah, we'll buy that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been super fun talking with you and getting to hear your story.
It's been enjoyable too. I enjoyed this.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Owen.
And there you have it. It's been a super fun conversation with Jason, getting to hear his story and all the things he does, the engineer extraordinaire. He's self-labeled. If you want to hear conversations like this or conversations that aren't like this as well, please follow and subscribe the podcast. Until then, this has been the Bossless Path. Catch you next time.